200 million, the Sheikh drawled, like he was ordering coffee. Nina, stuck refilling water glasses, nearly choked. That number, that obscene fortune, hung heavy in the air. The sleazy dealer in the blue suit grinned, confident. He had no clue. You see, Nina knew something he didn't, a secret etched in elegant, lying calligraphy. The inscription he bragged about wasn't a dedication to a caliph, but a cheap, tawdry love poem. A poem penned centuries after. The astrolabe was supposedly made. 20 million was about to change hands. For nothing. But Nina, she couldn't let it happen. Not this time. They had no idea how her quiet kindness would change everything. The forger had ruined her father. Now, she'd ruin him. Her manager's voice echoed in her head. Never speak to the guests. But Nina knew a secret. She knew the man was lying, because the ancient Arabic inscription he'd just translated was not only wrong, it was gibberish. She had 1 second to decide her dead-end job or the truth. The Sovereign Grand Hotel was not a building. It was a statement. It rose 70 stories above the city, a pillar of smoked glass and polished bronze that seemed to exist in a different, cleaner atmosphere than the streets below. Inside the lobby was a cathedral of beige marble, silent, but for the polite whisper of fountains and the ferial chime of a distant clock. Everything smelled of old money and white lees. Nina Price knew the smell. She breathed it in for 10 hours a day, but it never stuck to her. When her shift ended, she would step out the back service exit, and the scent would be instantly replaced by the reality of street-side hot dogs and bus exhaust. Nina was a waitress, not a server or an associate, the hotel's preferred euphemisms. She was a waitress, specifically in the Alcove, the hotel's hyper-exclusive reservations' only private dining wing. It was a job defined by invisibility. She was a pair of hands that refilled water, a shadow that cleared plates, a ghost that was expected to hear a whispered request from 20 FT away, but never ever be heard herself. Her manager, Mr. Peterson, a man whose spine seemed to be fused to the back of his starched collar, had laid out the rules on her first day. You are scenery, Miss Price. The guests are here for an experience. You are not part of it. You are to be efficient, silent, and invisible. Do you understand? Nina understood perfectly. She understood the crushing weight of her student debt, the faded diploma from her unfinished PhD, and the 3 overdue bills on her kitchen counter. She understood that this job, this humiliating pantomime of servitude, was the only thing standing between her and eviction. So she nodded, put on the perfectly pressed black uniform, and vanished. Her field of study, the very passion that had once lit up her life, was now a cruel joke. She had been a doctoral candidate at the University of Chicago, specializing in early Islamic artifacts and epigraphy. She could trace the lineage of a Kufic script from its origin in Kufa to its evolution in Al-Andalus. She could tell you just by the specific alloy of a 10th century Dharam which mine it had come from. She had a mind full of priceless knowledge, and she was using it to remember that Table 4 preferred sparkling water. No ice, with a lime wedge, not a lemon. The evening of the private booking began like any other, with a palpable hum of anxiety. The entire alcove had been bought out, not just one room, but all 3, plus the adjoining lounge. A team of sternal-looking men in dark suits had swept the place hours earlier, checking for listening devices, and Nina assumed escape routes. Top security, Peterson hissed to the staff, his face paler than usual. This is Sheikh Khaled Al-Jil. His family's sovereign wealth fund could buy this hotel chain with its pocket change. There will be 0 mistakes. You will not look him in the eye. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will anticipate, but you will not presume. clear his throat. "Is that clear?" Nina and the other staff members murmured their assent. The Sheikh arrived at precisely 8:01 p.m. He was a man who didn't just enter a room, he displaced the air in it. He was younger than Nina expected, perhaps in his late 40s, with a trimmed aristocratic beard and eyes that held a deep, intelligent weariness. He was flanked by his own head of security, a formidable man named Tar, and 2 other aides. They were polite, quiet, and exuded an aura of absolute control. Nina was assigned to the main dining suite, the sanctuary, along with 1 other waiter, a nervous young man named Ben. Peterson stood by the door, wringing his hands. At 8:15 p.m., the second party arrived. This was the man the Sheikh was here to meet. His name was Conrad Burke. Where the Sheikh was all understated power, Conrad Burke was a supernova of calculated charm. His suit was Italian, razor-sharp, and a shade of blue so bold it was almost aggressive. He had a brilliant white smile, a heavy gold watch, and the easy predatory confidence of a man who had never been told no. He was accompanied by a single older man who looked profoundly uncomfortable, a small, owlish academic type, clutching a leather briefcase, whom Burke introduced as my colleague, the esteemed Dr. Owen Hughes. The room was set. The players were in place. Na's job was simple. Pour the water, serve the bread, and disappear. "Mr. Peterson," she whispered, lingering by the door as the men took their seats. "The water for the Sheikh. I will handle it." Peterson cut her off, his voice a low vibration of panic. "You and Ben will serve the appetizers only when called. Otherwise, you stand by the service wall. And Miss Price?" "Yes, sir." "Do not engage." Na nodded, her face the perfect mask of compliant neutrality, and retreated to the wall. The door to the sanctuary clicked shut, and the multi-billion-dollar meeting began. The sanctuary was designed to insulate its occupants from the world. The walls were upholstered in dark, sound-dampening silk. The carpet was so thick that Na's feet left no sound as she moved. A heavy crystal chandelier cast a warm golden light over the massive mahogany table. It wasn't a room. It was a vault. For the first hour, Nina and Ben were summoned only once to serve the first course, a delicate arrangement of seared scallops and caviar. They moved in silence, a synchronized ballet of service. Nina placed the dish before Conrad Burke, who didn't even look up from the folder he was presenting to the Sheikh. "As you can see, Your Excellency," Burke was saying, his voice smooth as honey. "The provenance is impeccable. It's been in a private Swiss vault since 1948, untouched, unseen. A true ghost, a ghost that has suddenly appeared for a high price," the Sheikh noted. His English perfect with only a soft, musical accent. He tasted the scallop. His face remained neutral. The best ghosts always command a premium. Burke laughed, a practiced hearty sound. But this Sheikh coloured. "This is not just an item. It is a piece of your history, of world history returned." Nina retreated to her wall, standing beside a heavy marble credenza. From her vantage point, she could see all the players. The Sheikh was guarded, listening more than he spoke. His aide, Tar, stood near the door, unmoving, his eyes scanning the room, lingering on Burke, then on Dr. Hughes, and even for a discom sovereign. The academic Dr. Hughes was a nervous wreck. He hadn't touched his scallops. He kept wiping his palms on his trousers, his eyes darting between Burke and the Sheikh. He looked less like an esteemed colleague and more like a hostage. "Dr. Hughes," the Sheikh said suddenly, turning his attention to the smaller man, "you are the expert here. You have authenticated this piece." Dr. Hughes started, nearly knocking over his water glass. "Ah, yes. Yes, Your Excellency. It is magnificent. The craftsmanship is it's unparalleled. The lineage is solid. As Mr. Burke said, the provenance is solid. He sounded like he was reading a script he had memorized poorly. His voice was thin and ready. Burke clapped him on the shoulder, a gesture that was half encouragement, half warning. Owen is too modest. He's the foremost expert on Alandarusian scientific instruments. His word is bond in the auction world. He was quite frankly stunned by the discovery. Nina felt a small, bitter pang. Alandaroyan scientific instruments. That was her field. That was the subject of her unfinished dissertation. She had spent 3 years of her life cataloguing and analyzing the epigraphy on astrolabes from the Umayyad Caliphate. She knew the work of the great masters Ahmad ibn Khalaf, Ibrahim ibn Said, as if they were her own family. She knew the experts, too, and she had never ever heard of a Dr. Owen Hughes. She dismissed the thought. It wasn't her business. Her business was the empty breadbasket on the credenza. She moved silently, refilling it with rosemary focaccia, her movements economical and silent. The conversation continued, a dance of numbers and hypotheticals. Burke was a master. He wasn't just selling an object, he was selling a legacy. He spoke of the golden age of Cordoba, of the light of knowledge in an age of darkness, and how this one piece would be the undeniable crown jewel of the Sheikh's new museum. Clear's throat. It is a symbol, Burke declared, of your family's commitment to restoring that light. The Sheikh was unmoved by the flattery, but Nina could see he was interested. His weariness was gone, replaced by the keen, focused, Clear's throat look of a collector who smells a rare find. You have brought it, the Sheikh stated. It wasn't a question. Burke smiled, a slow, triumphant grin. Of course, I would not dare describe the sun to a man, and then not let him feel its warmth. He nodded to the corner of the room where 2 of his own security men stood by a large, reinforced, matte black pelican case. They had been so still, Nina had almost forgotten they were there. "Gentlemen," Burke said, "if you please." Peterson, who had been hovering by the door, scurried forward. "Miss Price, Ben, clear the table now." Nina and Ben sprang into action, sweeping away the first course plates. As Nina reached for Dr. Hughes's untouched dish, he flinched, his eyes wide with a brief, naked panic. "My apologies, sir," Nina murmured, keeping her own eyes down. Just be careful," he whispered, so low she could barely hear him. She nodded and retreated. The large case was brought to the table and placed in the center. It looked less like a container for art and more like a prop from a spy movie. The tension in the room thickened. The air conditioners hummed. "Your Excellency," Burke said, his voice dropping to a dramatic hush. "May I present the astrolabe of Cordoba?" He unlatched the case with a series of loud metallic clicks. The case hissed as its vacuum seal was broken. Burke opened the lid with the flourish of a stage magician. Clear's throat. Inside, nestled on a bed of custom-cut black velvet, was the artifact. Even from her station by the wall, Nina felt the breath catch in her throat. It was stunning. It wasn't the large, functional instrument she was used to seeing in museum replicas. This was a piece of jewelry, a work of art. It was about 8 in diameter, forged from a metal that glowed with the deep, warm color of rose gold, though it was likely a bronze-copper alloy. The raita, the intricate, lace-like top plate that showed the star positions, was not the usual functional grid. It was a swirling, delicate web of what looked like vines and flowers with star pointers shaped like tiny, perfect leaves. The martyr, the main body, was where the true artistry lay. Every inch of its surface was covered in a dense, breathtaking web of quick calligraphy. so fine it looked like it had been etched by the wind. "My word," the sheikh murmured, leaning forward. His collector's facade had cracked. He was genuinely in awe. "Crafted in 980 AD, Burke recited, his voice resonating with manufactured reverence. A gift for the Kaif himself. It is, as you can see, the single finest example of Umayyad craftsmanship ever discovered. The engraving, the precision, it's more than a tool. It's a prayer captured in metal." He gestured to Dr. Hughes. "Owen, the dedication, if you would." Dr. Hughes, sweating visibly under the warm lights, fumbled for a pair of glasses. He leaned over the astrolabe, his finger tracing the inscription around the outer rim. Clears throat. "Ah, yes, the dedication. It's right here. It reads," he cleared his throat, "Liel ol Mustansir, for the Kaif, the victorious." He continued, his voice shaking, reading a short, plausible-sounding dedication. Burke beamed. A direct link to the Kaif. No question of its origin. The sheikh nodded slowly. "It is beautiful, and the price a reflection of its uniqueness," Burke said, sliding a leather-bound folder across the table. "The independent appraisal and full authentication report from Dr. Hughes is inside. The price is $200 million, the number hung in the air, audacious and shocking. 200,000. The sheikh didn't flinch. He opened the folder and began to read. It was then that Nena was called forward. Mr. Peterson, seeing the men were deep in discussion, signaled for the wine service. It was a 1982 Waitress, a bottle that cost more than Nena's annual salary. Her hands, usually so steady, felt a slight tremor. She loaded the decanter and the fragile, paper-thin glasses onto her silver tray and approached the table. Her path took her directly past the astrolabe, still sitting in its open case. She poured for the sheikh first, her movements practiced and fluid, then for his aide, then for Conrad Burke, who winked at her. "Liquid gold, eh?" Nina ignored him, her face a professional mask. She moved to Dr. Hughes. The man was staring intently at the astrolabe, his brow furrowed. As Nena poured his wine, her vantage point changed. She was no longer 10 FT away. She was directly above the artifact. The light from the chandelier hit the metallic surface, and her eyes, trained by years of study, by thousands of hours staring at high-resolution photographs in dusty library archives, saw it. It wasn't one big thing. It was a dozen small, screaming impossibilities. Burke and the sheikh were now discussing payment terms, a deposit wire, transport, logistics. Their voices faded into a dull roar in Nena's ears. Her focus was absolute. She stood there frozen, holding the heavy decanter. Clear's throat. "Ms. Price." Peterson's voice hissed from the doorway. Nina didn't move. She was looking at the inscription, the beautiful flowing Kufic script. Dr. Hughes had translated the dedication, but Nena was reading the rest of it, the part that was supposed to be decorative, the part that filled the spaces between the larger lines. And Conrad Burke, in his opening speech, had made a mistake. He'd pointed to a flourish near the top and said, "A dedication to the Kaif himself." Na's blood ran cold. The Arabic he had pointed at the words he'd translated. They weren't a dedication, and the translation Dr. Hughes had just given. It was a complete fabrication. The words he'd spoken were nowhere on the rim. Nina looked closer, her heart hammering against her ribs. The script was beautiful, but it was also wrong. The letter Kaf was drawn with a modern, almost calligraphic flourish that didn't exist in 10th century Kufic. It was a 12th century feature at the earliest. The dal was slightly too elongated. It was a pastiche, a collection of styles from different centuries, mashed together by someone who was a brilliant artist, but a mediocre historian. And then she saw the mark, tucked into the most intricate part of the reta, so small it was almost invisible, was a maker's mark. It wasn't a 10th century craftsman's sigil. Nina knew that mark. She had seen it once before in a textbook, in a chapter on the most infamous modern forges. It was the stylized microscopic phoenix of a man named Gautier, a ghost in the art world. A man who had never been caught, and whose work was rumored to be hanging in a dozen major museums. The man who had ruined her father. Her father, Robert Price, had been a reputable small-time antiquities dealer. He'd staked his entire family's fortune on one piece, a supposedly lost Byzantine icon, only to have it exposed as a Gothia forgery. The scandal, the debt, the shame, it had destroyed him. It was the reason Nina was here in this uniform and not in a university library. This wasn't just a fake. This was his fake. The wire transfer for the initial deposit of $20 million is ready, the Sheikh's aide said, holding up a secure tablet. We just need your final authorization, sir. The Sheikh picked up the stylus, his eyes still on the astrolabe. It is a masterpiece. It truly is. Burke smiled, leaning back in his chair. The picture of success. They were about to transfer $20 million and commit to $180 million more for a piece of gilded trash, a piece of trash made by the very man who had torn her life apart. Miss Price, move away from the table. Peterson's voice was sharp, panicked. Na's hand was shaking. The decanter rattled against the tray. Her mind was screaming, say nothing. It's not your problem. You'll be fired. You'll be homeless. Say nothing. The Sheikh's finger hovered over the tablet. Nina set the decanter down on the credenza with a thud that was louder than she intended. The entire room turned to look at her. The invisible waitress had just made a sound. The silence that followed the thud of the decanter was absolute. Conrad Burke's smile twitched at the corners. Mr. Peterson looked like he was about to have a coronary. His face was a mottled, terrified red. The Sheikh's bodyguard, Tariq, shifted his weight, his hand moving subtly inside his jacket. Even the Sheikh, a man clearly accustomed to absolute control, raised an eyebrow. He looked at Nina, not with annoyance, but with simple, direct curiosity. Miss Price, Peterson choked out, rushing forward. My apologies. Your Excellency, gentlemen. The girl is new. She is clumsy. I am not clumsy, Mr. Peterson, Nina said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. This was it. The precipice, the end of her job, the end of her apartment, possibly the end of her life in this city. She could feel the adrenaline, hot and sharp, flooding her veins. It wasn't fear anymore. It was rage, a cold, academic, deeply personal rage. Excuse me, Burke said, his voice losing its honeyed tone and taking on a sharp metallic edge. I believe we are in the middle of a private transaction, Clear's throat. You are, Nina agreed, turning to face him. Her heart was a drum against Clear's throat. Her ribs, but her voice was miraculously steady. You're in the middle of a $200 million transaction. She turned her back on Burke, a deliberate, crushing insult, and looked directly at Sheikh Khalid. She had been warned not to look him in the eye. She did it anyway. Your Excellency, she said. Nina. Petersonen shrieked, grabbing her arm. Do not touch her, the Sheikh said, his voice soft. Peterson froze, his hand dropping as if it had been burned. The Sheikh's gaze was intense. You have something to say. Yes, sir, Nina said. You are a collector, a man who appreciates history. You are being sold a lie. The room exploded. What is the meaning of this? Burke roared, standing up so fast his chair screeched on the floor. This is an outrage, an accusation, security. Tariq, the Sheikh's guard, didn't move. He was watching his boss. The Sheikh held up a hand for silence. Clear's throat. He looked at Nina. A strong accusation. You should choose your next words with extreme care." "I will," Nena said. She walked to the table, her cheap server's shoes silent on the plush carpet. She stood before the astrolabe. "Mr. Burke, earlier this evening, you pointed to this flourish here." She indicated a small spiral of text, "and you told the sheikh it was a dedication to the kef." Burke crossed his arms. "And it is. Our expert confirmed it." "No, he didn't." Nena said he translated a different inscription, a plausible one. "But this one," Clear's throat, "this is what you pointed to." She leaned in, her eyes tracing the script. "It's not a dedication." Clear's throat. "It's not even 10th century Arabic. It's a 19th century Persian love poem, a very common one. It begins, 'The sun is a golden eye, and the moon is its tear. It has no place on an Eleusinian artifact.'" Burke's face went white. He looked at Dr. Hughes, a look of pure venom. She's mistaken," Hughes stammered, his eyes wide. "The light is poor." "She's just a waitress," Nena finished for him. "I know, but I'm a waitress who spent 4 years cataloguing the Alakam II collection for her doctoral thesis. And that brings me to the second problem." She pointed to the main inscription on the rim. The dedication Dr. Hughes did translate the one he read aloud. "Lil Kala al-Mustansa, for the Kaif the victorious." It's a good line, it's just not what's written here. The sheikh leaned in, his eyes narrowing. "What is written here?" "Nah," said her voice, dropping, "is gibberish." "Gibberish?" the sheikh repeated. "Utter nonsense," Nena confirmed. "It uses the right letters, but it forms no words. Alif, lam, kaf, none. It's an aesthetic forgery. Someone copied the shapes of Kufic script without understanding the language. They were copying from a pattern book. They knew what 10th century Arabic looked like, but not what it said." "This is insane," Burke shouted. "Your Excellency, are you going to listen to this?" This servant over the word of an accredited expert. The sheikh ignored him. He was staring at the astrolabe and then at Nena. A new dangerous light was in his eyes. He was re-evaluating everything. "You said accredited expert," Nena said, turning to Dr. Hughes. "Dr. Owen Hughes. I've never heard of you, but I have heard of your previous employer, the London Antiquities Board. You were dismissed in 2019, weren't you, for authenticating a series of Roman coins that turned out to be high-quality fakes from a workshop in Naples." Dr. Hughes looked as though Nena had just shot him. He collapsed back into his chair, his face slick with sweat. That was a mistake." "This," Nena said, gesturing to the astrolabe, "is not a mistake. This is a felony." The room was tomb silent. All pretense had vanished. Burke was no longer a charming salesman. He was a cornered animal. The sheikh was no longer a polite client. He was a judge. "And the final most damning proof," Na said, her voice filled with a cold, righteous fury that had been building for years, "is this." She asked the sheikh's aide for his tablet. The man looked at his boss, who nodded. The tablet was handed over. Na's fingers, stained with silver polish, flew across the screen, pulling up a browser, typing in an academic URL from memory. "I don't need a magnifying glass," she said. "I know this mark by heart." She turned the tablet around. On the screen was a high-resolution image from her unfinished dissertation's archive. It was a close-up of a different artifact, a Byzantine icon. And tucked into the corner in the gold leaf was a microscopic mark, a stylized phoenix. "This is the signature of a forger known as Gothia," Nina said. "The man responsible for the fake Roman coins Dr. Hughes authenticated. The man responsible for a dozen scandals. He's a ghost, but he's an arrogant ghost. He signs his work." She then pointed to the astrolabe, to the tiny, almost invisible mark hidden in the metal lace of the rat. "It's right there." The sheikh leaned in. Tariq leaned in. They looked from the tablet to the astrolabe. It was a perfect match. The artifice was shattered. The $200 million artifact was a worthless, modern-day-made prop. Conrad Burke's face was a mask of pure hatred. He looked at Nena with such violence in his eyes that she took an involuntary step back. "You," he seethed, his voice a low hiss. "You have no idea what you've done. You just signed your death warrant." Before anyone could react, Burke lunged. But he wasn't lunging for Nena. He was lunging for the astrolabe. He grabbed the multi-million-dollar fake and raised it high above his head. His intention, clear to smash it, to destroy the evidence. He never got the chance. Tariq moved with a speed that was terrifying. He crossed the room in one stride, his hand not reaching for a gun, but for Burke's wrist. There was a sickening crack of bone, and Burke screamed, a high, piercing sound that was abruptly cut off as Tariq's other hand chopped him across the throat. Burke collapsed like a string-cut puppet, the astrolabe clattering harmlessly onto the thick carpet. Dr. Hughes let out a small, terrified wail and put his hands on his head. Mr. Peterson by the door fainted dead away. Nena stood, breathing heavily, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. The sheikh calmly straightened his suit cuff. He looked down at the gasping, clutching his throat Conrad Burke, then at the unconscious Petersonen, then at the weeping Dr. Hughes. Finally, he looked at Nena, and then, to her utter astonishment, he turned his head and spoke to her in perfect formal Arabic. "Fil Mickey al-Hakuna. In your expert opinion, what is the real thing here?" Nena didn't hesitate. She replied in the same flawless academic Arabic. "Hada! Hard! This is a fake! This is a fake!" The sheikh repeated her words in English, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across his face. He looked at the astrolabe, then back at her. "I believe you." That this is a fake hung in the air, a final judgment. The shift in the room was absolute. The sheikh's aides, who had been passive observers, were suddenly terrifyingly efficient. While Tariq hauled the gasping Conrad Burke into a chair and bound his hands with a set of discreet, high-tensile zip ties, the other aide was on the phone, speaking in low, rapid Arabic. It was clear he was not calling the hotel security. He was calling a power far above them. Dr. Hughes was sobbing openly now. "He made me do it. He has materials on me. He threatened my family. My reputation was already, I had no choice." "You always have a choice, doctor," the sheikh said, his voice devoid of pity. "You simply made the wrong one. You will, however, be given an opportunity to make the right one. You will cooperate fully with my associates, and you will tell them everything you know about Mr. Burke's operation and about Gothia." The mention of the forger's name made Hughes flinch. "I don't know him. I swear Burke was the contact. I just provided the academic cover, the provenance." "A convenient lie," the sheikh said, waving a hand in dismissal. Tariq, having finished with Burke, moved to the still unconscious Mr. Peterson. He checked his pulse, then, with a surprising gentleness, propped him up in a sitting position against the wall and splashed a small amount of water from a glass onto his face. Peterson sputtered, his eyes fluttering open. He took in the scene. Burke tied to a chair, Hughes weeping, the sheikh in complete command. His eyes landed on Nena, who was standing stunned near the credenza. "Miss Price," Peterson whispered, his face ashen. You're fired," Nena almost laughed. The absurdity of it after all this, his primary concern, was hotel protocol. "She is not," the sheikh said, his voice like cracking ice. Peterson's mouth snapped shut. "In fact," the sheikh continued, "it appears Ms. Price is the only person in this room, aside from my own staff, who is not either a criminal, a fool, or a coward. Mr. Peterson, you may leave. My people will find you later to discuss the lapse in your hotel's security. Peterson, a man broken, simply nodded, scrambled to his feet, and fled the room. Now it was just the Sheikh's team, the captives, and Nina. The adrenaline was beginning to fade, leaving her knees weak. She gripped the edge of the credenza for support. The Sheikh turned his full attention to her. The transition from ruthless executive to something else was jarring. He was calm, his eyes analytical, but not unkind. You spoke of your doctoral thesis, he said. Yes, Your Excellency. I didn't finish. I ran out of money. Epigraphy, Andalusian artifacts, and you recognized the forger's mark. He gestured to the astrolabe on the floor. This Gothia, you seem to have a personal interest. Na's throat tightened. The mask of the professional waitress was gone. The mask of the academic was gone. All that was left was the raw, painful memory. He ruined my father, she said, her voice small. My father was Robert Price. He was a dealer, a small one, but he was honest. He loved the history. He acquired a piece, a Byzantine icon. It was his masterpiece. He bet everything on it. His reputation, our savings, our house. She looked at the astrolabe. It was a Gothia, a perfect, beautiful, worthless fake. When it was exposed, my father was ruined. He was accused of being in on the scam. Clear's throat. The shame, he died 2 years later. The official cause was a heart attack. But I know it was the shame that killed him. She hadn't meant to say any of it. The words just came. The Sheikh was silent for a long moment. He looked at the fake on the floor, his expression hardening. Robert Price. I remember the name. The icon of St. Demetrius. It was a scandal. I'm sorry for your loss. Your father was an honorable man who was tricked by thieves. He knew. He knew the name of the icon. He knew her father's story. Mr. Burke's operation, the Sheikh said, his voice shifting back to business, is clearly larger than one astrolabe. The 200 million, I suspect, it was not just for profit. It was to fund something else. Gautier's work is often used to finance less savory enterprises. Weapons trafficking. He provides the clean, high-value collateral. The Sheikh walked over to Conrad Burke, who was now glaring at him, silent and murderous. You, the Sheikh said to him, are a small, loud fish, but you swim in a very dark pond. You are going to tell us who you swim with. Burke spat on the carpet. Go to hell. Tariq stepped forward, but the Sheikh waved him off. There is no need for that. You see, Mr. Burke, my associates, who are on their way, are not hotel security. They are from an international agency that has a vested interest in shutting down Gautier's funding. They are not as constrained by polite society as I am. I imagine you will be quite forthcoming. He then turned to Nina. Ms. Price, you have done me a service tonight that is difficult to quantify. You not only saved my fund, $200 million, you have saved my reputation from profound embarrassment. And you have perhaps given us the first real lead on Gothia in almost a decade. I was just doing my job, Nina stammered, then realized how ridiculous that sounded. No, I couldn't let him. I couldn't let that man, she pointed at the astrolabe, win again. I understand, the Sheikh said. A commotion was heard outside the door. New voices, low and professional. The Sheikh's aides opened it. 3 new people entered. They were not in hotel uniforms. They were in plain, functional suits, and they carried with them an air of cold, indisputable authority. They glanced at Burke, at Hughes, and at the astrolabe, and then at the Sheikh, with whom they exchanged a brief, respectful nod. The clean-up crew had arrived. Tariq, the Sheikh commanded. Take the doctor and Mr. Burke into the adjoining room. Our friends need to speak with them privately." As Burke was hauled to his feet, he made one last, desperate play. He locked eyes with Nanina. "You!" he yelled, his voice raw. "You'll be looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life. Goya doesn't forgive. He doesn't forget. You're a dead woman." Tarek didn't bother hitting him again. He simply covered his mouth with one massive hand and dragged him from the room as if he were a disobedient child. Dr. Hughes went meekly, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The door clicked shut, leaving Naina alone with the sheikh. The silence in the room was a palpable relief. The scent of fear and aggression lingered, but the immediate threat was gone. All that was left was the evidence: an overturned wine glass, the abandoned fake on the floor, and the two of them. The sheikh walked to the window, pushing aside the heavy curtains to look out at the city lights 70 stories below. The skyline was a glittering web of diamonds, a world away from the drama that had just unfolded. "You were very brave, Ms. Price," he said, his back still to her. "Or perhaps just very angry." "A bit of both, I think," Nina admitted. The adrenaline was gone now, and she just felt tired and unemployed. "Mr. Peterson was right. I am fired." "You are not fired," the sheikh said, turning back. "You were never an employee of this hotel. You were a consultant working on my behalf." "Sir, this hotel," he said with a wave of his hand, "is one of new acquisitions. I am, as of 3 months ago, the majority owner of the Sovereign Grand Corporation. Mr. Peterson was technically your employee." Na's jaw dropped. "But you find it is often best to observe a new asset in its natural state, to see how it truly functions." "Tonight I learned it functions poorly, with one notable exception." He smiled, a genuine warm smile that transformed his severe features. "A manager who faints, a security protocol that allows a known associate of a forger to get this close, and a waitress who knows 10th century Kufic script. A very educational evening." He walked to the table, and with a look of deep distaste, used a napkin to pick up the Gautier fake. He held it up to the light. "It is beautiful," he mused. "That is the poison of it. Gautier is not just a criminal. He is an artist, a parasite who feeds on history." "He destroys it," Nina said, her voice hard. "He sees the record with lies. Every fake he creates makes it harder to trust what is real." "Exactly." The sheikh placed the astrolabe back in its case and snapped the lid shut as if closing a coffin. "Which is why I have spent the last 5 years building a new museum in Dubai. Not just for art, but for truth. A place where every piece is authenticated beyond reproach, using science and history side by side." He looked at her, his dark eyes searching. "I am building a team, the best in the world. Historians, curators, analysts, epigraphers, people who can tell the difference between a lie and the truth." Na's heart, which she was sure had stopped, began to beat again, this time with a slow, unfamiliar pulse. It wasn't fear. It was hope. "Your Excellency," she began, not daring to assume. "Ms. Price." "Nina, you are unemployed," he stated. "So it seems, sir." "This is unacceptable," he said. "A mind like yours, a passion like yours, it is a waste-serving wine to men like Conrad Burke. It is in its own way a crime. He didn't make a grand speech. He didn't promise her the world. He made a simple, direct statement. I am offering you a job, not as a waitress, not as a consultant. I want you to be the head of my new department of antiquities and provenance. You will finish your doctorate. My foundation will fund it. You will have access to a lab that is second to none. You will have a staff. Your sole purpose will be to hunt, to find the real, to expose the fake, and to protect our history." He named a salary that made Nena feel light-headed. It was a number that didn't just pay off her debts, it erased them from existence. It changed her life. It changed her family's life, even the ones who were gone. And he added a glint in his eye. Your first official assignment should you accept? Yes, Nina breathed. You have given me the lead I needed. Go, Tia. We now have his associate, his expert, and his handiwork. We know his signature. I believe I know where he is. I have been hunting this man for a very long time. He too cost my family a great deal long ago. He held out a hand. I am flying to Antwerp tomorrow. I find I am in need of an expert. I would be honored if you would join me. Antwerp, the center of the illicit antiquities trade, the place Gauthier was rumored to call home. This wasn't just a job offer. It was a quest. It was a chance to finish what her father had started, a chance to reclaim his name, more, Claire's throat, and to build her own. Nina looked at her hands. They were no longer the hands of an invisible servant. They were the hands of an expert. She looked Sheikh Khalid Al-Jam in the eye. Your Excellency, Nina Price said, her voice clear and strong. When do we leave? The flight to Antwerp was a blur. Nina slept for the first time in years, a deep, dreamless sleep, in a seat that converted into a full-sized bed aboard the Sheikh's private A380. When she awoke, her waitress uniform was gone, replaced by a wardrobe of tailored clothes procured by a quiet, efficient aide. She was no longer Nina Price, the server. She was Dr. Price, the expert, the title the Sheikh staff had been instructed to use. Antwerp was cold, grey, and ancient. They did not go to a five-star hotel. They went to a discreet, heavily secured townhouse owned by the Sheikh's Foundation. Claire's throat. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind. The associates, a team from Interpol's art crime unit, debriefed her. They showed her photos, files, and transcripts from the interrogation of Burke and Hughes. Nina, fueled by coffee and a burning sense of purpose, tore through the data. Goya's signature wasn't just the Phoenix. It was his method. He's not just a forger, she explained to the Sheikh and the team of agents, projecting a slide of the astrolabe next to the Byzantine icon. He's a storyteller. He doesn't just fake an object. He fakes the history. He creates a narrative. He finds a real documented gap in the historical record, and he invents a piece to fill it. The astrolabe of Cordoba, she said, was created because there's a 15-year gap in the records of the Kaif's workshop. Gauthier knew that he was selling the story, not just the item. So how do we find him? The lead agent, a no-nonsense woman named Detective Visser, asked. By thinking like he does, Nina said. He's arrogant. He believes he's smarter than the history he's faking. His flaw, the one I saw in the astrolab, is anachronism. He mixes periods. His artistry is perfect, but his scholarship is sloppy. He's a 12th century script on a 10th century piece. The Sheikh watched her, a look of profound satisfaction on his face. He had found his hunter. He's been working with Burke on a new project, Visser said, tapping a file. Something big. Hughes confirmed it. A lost collection. The Emeralds of Granada. A set of priceless jewels and texts supposedly rescued from the fall of the city in 1492. Burke was lining up a new buyer. A set, Na said, her mind racing. Not one piece, a whole collection. That's his mistake. That's too much. Too many pieces to get right. He'll be sloppy. He has a workshop. Visser said, we think it's here in Antwerp. He hides in plain sight as a restorer of high-end antiques. Gauthier, Nina said, the name tasting like ash. Find me a list of the most exclusive high-end restorers in this city. The ones who specialize in metalwork and gem setting. The ones who've been in business for at least a decade with a spotless reputation. The list was short. Only 3. One of them, Artisan Dutton, was located in a historic building in the old city. "That's him," Nena said, pointing. "How do you know?" Visser asked. "The name Artisans of Time. It's arrogant. It's his kind of poetry." The raid was quiet. No sirens, just a swift, professional team of tactical police acting on Visser's warrant. Nina and the Sheikh waited in the command van, watching the body cam feeds. The front of the shop was a pristine, beautiful showroom of 18th century clocks and furniture. But the feed showed the team moving to the back through a reinforced door and into the basement. The basement was not a restorer's shop. It was a laboratory. It was a forgery factory. There were crucibles, laser etchers, 3D printers, and vats of chemicals for artificial aging. And on a workbench, under a brilliant white light, was a set of ancient emerald-encrusted book covers, the Emeralds of Granada. And sitting at the bench, a magnifying glass strapped to his head, was a milder-looking man in his 60s with greying hair and the delicate hands of a surgeon. "Mr. Gautier," Visser's voice said over the feed, "you are under arrest." The man didn't even look up. He just sighed, as if he'd been interrupted from a difficult task. "The Rita," he said in French. "It was the rate on the Astrolab, wasn't it?" I told Burke the script was too modern. He was impatient. Nina felt a chill. He knew. He knew exactly what his flaw was. The Sheikh stepped out of the van. He walked to the front of the building, and as the police brought Gautier out in handcuffs, the 2 men locked eyes. Gautier, the forger, the Sheikh, the collector. 2 sides of a dark coin. Gautier saw Nina standing beside the Sheikh. He paused. He looked at her, his eyes assessing. "You," he said, his voice quiet. "You must be the girl from the restaurant, the one with the opinion." "I am Robert Price's daughter," Nina said, her voice shaking, but her gaze steady. Gautier's expression didn't change, but a flicker of understanding crossed his face. "Ah, yes, the icon. That was early work, a bit sentimental." He smiled, a thin reptilian smile. "But a fake, my dear, that is so good it can fool the world. Is it not in its own way a masterpiece?" "It's a lie," Nina said, "and it's over." "Art is never over, my dear," Gautier said, as they pushed him into the car. "It just changes hands." The car drove away. It was finished. The man who had destroyed her father was in handcuffs. The man who had sold the lie was in a holding cell. Na stood on the cold cobblestone street, and for the first time in a decade, she felt like she could breathe. The Sheikh came and stood beside her. He didn't say anything for a long time. "It is done," he said. "It's done," she agreed. "Your father has his justice, Nena, and you. You have your future." He gestured to the car that was waiting for them. "Come, we have a museum to build. And I have a genuine 11th century astrolabe in my Geneva vault. I'd like a second opinion on its Kufic script." Nina looked at the man who had, in 48 hours, changed her entire world. She smiled. "I'd be happy to," she said, "but I charge a consulting fee." The Sheikh laughed, a full, genuine laugh that echoed in the old Antwerp street. "Of course you do, and I will happily pay it." They got in the car, leaving the dark workshop and the grey city behind, and headed toward the future. The world is full of people like Conrad Burke, who use charm to sell a lie, and people like Mr. Peterson, who are too afraid to see the truth. But it's also full of people like Nanina. People who are underestimated, overlooked, and invisible, but who are secretly holding priceless knowledge. Na's expertise wasn't just in her head, it was her weapon. She didn't just save a billionaire from a scam. She reclaimed her own life and finished her father's fight. This story shows that your value isn't defined by the uniform you wear, but by the knowledge you've worked so hard to gain. The right person in the right moment can change everything. What did you think of Naina's bravery? Have you ever been in a situation where you knew more than you were supposed to? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to be reminded of their own power. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another.